Let me tell you something wild that's been quietly playing out behind palace walls. Kate Middleton didn't just marry into royalty, she inherited a legacy. Literally, we're talking about jewels that aren't just shiny objects, but silent messengers of power, trust, and history. The real shock? These weren't just handed over like party favors, they were passed down based on signals, symbolism, and a level of trust most people never saw coming. So here's where things get interesting. We've all seen the Cartier halo tiara, right? That delicate piece of art Kate wore on her wedding day? That wasn't just something borrowed. It was the Queen's way of saying, "You're in." That tiara had already graced the heads of Queen Elizabeth II, Princess Margaret, and Princess Anne. It was worn by women transitioning into major roles, and Kate stepping into it meant she wasn't just a duchess anymore, she was a chosen one. But it didn't stop there. The jewels kept coming, slowly, strategically. The Nizam of Hyderabad necklace, a showstopper worth over £60 million sterling, 0 pence, showed up around Kate's neck at events that weren't just fancy dinners, but global political stages. And that wasn't just Elizabeth being generous, that was a calculated move. The Queen, who wore that same necklace in some of her most iconic portraits, was handing over a piece of her legacy, wrapped in diamonds. Now let's rewind for a second. People often forget that Kate didn't start as some glamorous figure. She wasn't born into this. She stepped into the spotlight carefully, quietly, and with a whole lot of patience. She didn't rush into attention the way others have, and the Queen noticed that. While others sparked headlines and drama, Kate moved with quiet strength, and that's exactly the kind of energy Elizabeth admired. That's what those jewels started to reflect. Because here's the thing, in the royal world, jewels talk. They're not just for sparkle. They're a language. Queen Elizabeth was known for using her personal jewelry like secret code. A certain brooch could signal support, a tiara alone could indicate approval, and for years, eagle-eyed royal watchers noticed the pattern. Kate was wearing more and more of the Queen's private pieces, not the crown jewels, those belong to the nation, but Elizabeth's personal stash, the pieces she chose herself, wore during her biggest moments, and guarded fiercely. And then boom, Princess Anne, the Queen's most no-nonsense child, drops a truth bomb. Anne reveals that Queen Elizabeth had already made a quiet decision before her death, but Elizabeth reminded her she had made a choice before her very first. She wanted Kate to inherit those legendary jewels. The Cartier tiara, the Nizam necklace, the Graf earrings, all of it. Not because of rank or titles, but because Kate represented something deeper. Continuity, poise, and trust. It wasn't a public announcement. There was no press release. But the moment Anne said it out loud, everything clicked. These pieces weren't just chosen at random. The Queen had a plan, and Kate was central to it. Because while the monarchy shifts under King Charles and new roles shuffle into place, someone has to hold the line. Someone has to keep the spirit of Elizabeth alive, and that someone is clearly Kate. What's crazy is that these jewels now serve as anchors. When Kate steps out in them, it's not just a fashion moment. It's a visual reminder that the legacy continues. The Queen may be gone, but her presence shines through diamonds that now rest on the shoulders of a future queen consort. And it all started with a tiara that looked delicate but held the weight of history. Kate's rise in the royal family isn't just a story about charm and elegance. It's about strategic trust, earned in silence and sealed with heirlooms. People love to romanticize the monarchy, but behind every tiara and wave from a balcony is a calculated decision. And when it comes to the late Queen's personal jewels, there's no one who received more unspoken approval than Catherine, Princess of Wales. Let's talk about the Graf chandelier earrings. They're massive, dazzling, unmistakable. But what made them special wasn't their sparkle, it was where they showed up. Kate wore them at the wedding of Jordan's Crown Prince Hussein, a globally watched event filled with dignitaries and royalty. It wasn't just about showing face, it was about showing legacy. Those earrings had once adorned Queen Elizabeth II herself, worn at state banquets, world tours, and key moments of her reign. For Kate to wear them at such a symbolic gathering, that was a message, loud and clear. Each piece she wears tells a chapter. It's like reading a royal diary made of diamonds and platinum. There's Queen Mary's diamond choker, bold and rigid, a nod to the monarchy's backbone. The Queen Mother's sapphire brooch, deep blue, timeless, and worn close to to the heart. Even the triple strand pearl necklace, simple yet iconic, quietly suggests that grace and strength can coexist. Kate has access to these and more, not because of entitlement, but because of consistency. She's never courted chaos, she's never stirred up drama, she's just shown up over and over again. The monarchy doesn't hand out power like candy. It passes it down through repetition, tradition, and symbolism. And that's why Queen Elizabeth's choices mattered so much. Unlike the crown jewels locked in the Tower of London, these personal pieces were hers to give. They were her whispers to the future. Every time Kate wears one, she's carrying out a quiet command: protect the legacy. And here's the contrast that makes everything even more interesting. Queen Camilla, technically she's the current queen consort. She has the titles, she has access to ceremonial pieces, but when it comes to Queen Elizabeth's personal jewelry box, she's been left out. No Cartier tiaras, no private brooches, nothing that came from the queen's own hands. That wasn't an oversight, it was intentional. Camilla's place in the royal family came late, complicated by history and a long road to acceptance. Even though she's earned a role, she didn't earn the jewel. Elizabeth was methodical. She understood what the public saw, what they remembered, and she knew that jewelry wasn't just about sparkle, it was about symbolism. Giving those pieces to Kate, who has consistently stayed grounded, was a calculated move. It created a visual bridge from Elizabeth to Catherine, a reassurance to the world that the future was in safe hands. And that's exactly what these jewels represent: stability in an unstable world. When news cycles spin fast and royals face criticism at every turn, Kate's image remains calm, composed, and relatable. She doesn't speak much, but her presence says everything. Her jewelry, handpicked from Elizabeth's own collection, says even more. It says she was chosen, not just to wear these pieces, but to carry their meaning. Every stone, every setting is a stamp of approval, a royal nod that transcends generations. And in the royal family, where so much is built on image, that silent approval carries more power than any speech. Catherine's presence today isn't just the result of good press or public affection. It's the product of decades of quiet grooming, private mentoring, and deliberate decisions that were never shouted, only shown. Her closeness with Queen Elizabeth wasn't just for appearances. They shared quiet lunches, walked side by side at engagements, and built a relationship where approval was never spoken aloud, but given through gestures that held more weight than words. Elizabeth wasn't the type to casually hand over family treasures. She'd worn many of these pieces herself during times that shaped the very identity of modern royalty. The idea of letting someone else carry that history wasn't sentimental, it was strategic. These weren't just pretty heirlooms sitting in velvet boxes, they were tools, they were signals, they were history with a clasp. Anne, who rarely ever entertained emotion in public, became the unlikely mess. When she publicly stated that the Queen had already chosen to give these jewels to Kate, it shook the room without needing drama. Anne didn't say it for headlines, she said it to put things to rest, to explain that this wasn't favoritism or gossip, it was already done, years in the making. Elizabeth had carefully mapped it out, piece by piece, no auctions, no ambiguous inheritance, it just direct placement into the hands of the woman she believed represented everything the monarchy needed to survive another century. These jewels didn't go to the most senior royal. They didn't follow rigid protocols, they followed values, self-restraint, dedication, a willingness to serve, not overshadow. Kate didn't win those diamonds, she earned them. It's not just what Catherine wears, but how and when. A tiara at a state banquet becomes more than a fashion moment. It becomes a subtle cue that Britain still values tradition. A brooch at a children's charity says, "This crown still remembers the people." Her choices create a story without speaking. And in today's loud world, that kind of quiet communication is rare and powerful. The monarchy is shifting. King Charles leads, but he's not the face of the future. That title, unofficially but unmistakably, belongs to Kate. When she steps out, especially with the Queen's diamonds around her neck, she doesn't just look regal, she feels like continuity. There's no panic when she speaks, no chaos in her movement, just that calm, camera-ready presence that reminds the British public why the monarchy still matters, even if it's no longer the center of power. People pay attention, especially during times of change. They notice when Kate wears the triple strand pearls, the same ones Elizabeth wore during World War II speeches and after Diana's funeral. It reminds them of resilience. They see the Nizam necklace sparkling at diplomatic receptions and know it means Britain still plays on the global stage. The impact isn't in the sparkle, it's in the symbolism. As more appearances loom, banquets, coronations, overseas tours, more jewels will resurface. Some haven't been seen in decades, some were presumed locked away forever, but they're not being pulled out for nostalgia, they're being assigned one by one to Kate. Each loan is a whisper from the past that says, "You're ready now." Catherine is no longer being prepared, she is the preparation. She's the monarchy's best move in a modern game. Every tiara, necklace, and brooch she wears carries legacy on its chain. They're not just relics, they're reminders. And in her hands, the royal story doesn't just live on, it gleams.